Hello everyone. My name is Tommy from TM1. Let's navigate through the digital landscape to transform in this new era. Digital transformation has brought upon a new way of thinking, and it is vital that we pivot our mindsets into a human-centered approach. Every step into the unknown takes a huge leap of faith. Let's take that leap together into a sustainable future that embraces human-led innovation. See you on the other side.
Welcome to TM1 Leap Summit 2021. Human-centered technology, taking transformation forward. Bring your newborn child into a hyper-connected world with smart and efficient healthcare. Experience superior citizen services with ID registration and easy transactions for the hospital bill payment. The first step towards the ultimate human experience where everything is at your fingertips. Enjoy a seamless shopping experience with customized lists based on your digital footprint. You can now purchase your household needs from anywhere and at any time, so you can spend more time with your little one. As your child grows, he will explore infinite possibilities in vast, boundless areas of interests and knowledge. Your child is empowered with a seamless interactive experience as they learn with other students globally, creating leaders of tomorrow in a united digital world. Commemorate a parent's proud moment when your child reaches the milestone of purchasing his first car. Your AI-powered shopping assistant provides him a personalized interface as he searches for his dream car in a virtual showroom and receives accelerated online loan approval through the convenience of a mobile device. Meanwhile, the car manufacturer can indulge your needs and wants cost-effectively thanks to the state-of-the-art AI-powered robotics. The car is optimally manufactured to ultimate precision and efficiency with calibrated measures for added safety. The manufacturer can also track the progress in real time, ensuring that your child's car is delivered promptly. Venture into the future to build an advanced society for generations to come with digital cities powered by 5G and enhanced ecosystems, built upon machine learning, artificial intelligence, and analytics. Embrace a smooth digitalization journey with rapid innovation through cloud and increased digital trust with cybersecurity. Transform every aspect of our lives with a leap into the brighter horizons. Enhancing technological developments. Accelerating a more humane future technology. A new future for all. Good morning and thank you for joining us here at TM1 Leap Summit 2021 and taking the next step towards innovation. I'm Adrian Seat. With a digital economy undergoing a radical change, human-centered technology is taking charge of today's extremely dynamic environment. TM1 is championing the move towards a digital future with humanity at its heart by embracing a people-first approach. This morning, we venture into a new era of possibilities by prioritizing user needs and by increasing customer satisfaction. Through their insights, our lineup of brilliant speakers today will set the benchmark for all our digital transformation achievements. Our hope is that you, our future-thinking leaders in attendance today, will take home a treasure trove of information that then enables you to effectively kickstart a digital revolution in your respective organizations. As we now commence our event, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the Group Chief Executive Officer of TM, Imri Mokhtar. As the Group CEO of TM, he brings with him over 25 years of experience in technology, strategy, and business transformation. He balances his focus across three leadership priorities: customer innovation, TM's business health, and the organizational adaptability to be future-ready. With his opening address entitled "The Power of Knowing, Creating the Ultimate Experience," please join me and welcome Imri Mokhtar.
Thank you, Adrian. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning, everyone. Let me bid you a warm welcome to the 4th TM1 LIB Summit. Thank you for joining us. While the circumstances are different, I'm grateful that human-centered technology has enabled us to meet again. The past 18-odd months have taught me one thing. In the face of adversity, there are opportunities. Whilst we shift our focus towards returning to a time before the pandemic, the lessons learned from this challenging period are both valuable and profound. Technology and the accelerated rate in which they are adopted during the pandemic has shown that the world is ready to move forward beyond the fringes of digitalization to making digitalization our way of life. It has become the nucleus of our way of living. Working remotely, flexible hours, and the hybrid working model are all made possible through digitalization. With the change in the way we work and conduct our business, customer expectations have evolved too. Digital and online platforms have become the preferred choice of engagement. To customers of the post-pandemic era, the ultimate experience is a seamless digital journey that is personalized and catered specifically for them. Whilst this was the differentiator before the pandemic, in the post-pandemic era, it will become the norm. It requires us to possess the understanding about human behavior through insights and intelligence, and the ability to interpret this information to make the most of it at the right time. This is the power of knowing. The power of knowing will require a deep and meaningful relationship between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. AI will assist us in filtering, processing, and deciphering the huge amounts of data and information gathered from our day-to-day business operations, whilst the human intelligence is required to interpret the data, utilizing it in ways that will delight the customer. What data and trends can tell us about the present by interpreting what has happened? The human touch, our intuition, will help shape our actions in the future, effectively predicting customers' wants before they even realize it. And driving this forward amongst the infrastructure, the software, the technology, and the people is the right organizational DNA. One that embraces speed, agility, a collaborative approach, and a genuine desire to create a human-centered relationship. TM is a national institution, one that has served you for many, many decades. Throughout this period, we've evolved from a telecommunications provider to a convergence player, and we are now on our journey to become a human-centered technology company. Our journey is guided by the changing needs of our customers, you. This paradigm shift is essential for us to continue to play our part in powering a digital Malaysia. Whether it's providing a digital service for one customer or rolling out an enterprise solution for a company with 1 million customers, our approach remains the same. That is to optimize our systems, technologies, solutions, and capabilities to address the human need first before everything else. In the oil and gas sector, for example, we are collaborating with our customer to make unmanned oil platforms a reality. Thanks to a human-centered technology, it will be possible to keep oil rig workers out of harm's way whilst reducing their exposure to risk, while at the same time ensuring that productivity remains. In manufacturing, we are working closely with our customers to enable advanced factory automation. This will assist human workers by making light work of heavy or repetitive tasks. And beyond our customers, our improvements in technology and efficiency are best exemplified in the way we operate at TM. To move at the speed of digital, we've synergized human intelligence and artificial intelligence with robotic process automation in various processes across TM. As a result, more than 230,000 hours of tasks have been automated. This in turn freed our workforce to focus more on innovation and efficiency, thus improving the overall productivity. And this power of knowing has enabled us to change and adapt our way of working. Digitalization and technology have enabled us to adopt a hybrid way of working for now and also into the future. It has enabled us to empower our employees to take control of their own time while still being productive in whatever that they need to do at TM. And the power of knowing also means investing where it matters, both in technology and in infrastructure. Over the past decade, at TM, we've invested over 22.4 billion ringgit in digital connectivity and digital infrastructure. Powering our ambitions and the ambitions of you, our customers, is our extensive state-of-the-art network with over 640,000 kilometers of fiber cables. Well, to give you a sense, it's enough to circle the earth about 16 times. And also about taking our solutions into cloud and the area of cybersecurity, our award-winning data centers spanning over 200,000 square feet. And soon as Malaysia moves into a 5G-enabled future, our network and infrastructure is ready to serve you, our customers, consumer, enterprises, as well as in the public sector. In the next 3 years, we will continue to invest in our people, our infra, and our technology to be ready for the next wave of innovation that will come, especially in digital solutions that shall deliver a delightful customer experience. An investment in digital solutions will require strengthening our technology and human capital capabilities in cloud, cybersecurity, IoT, and analytics, focusing not just on the technology, but also on the talent, mindset, and capabilities that will take these technologies to the next level. We've developed at TM a three-pronged approach to cultivate this world-class digital talent. Firstly, through the technical upskilling of our current workforce. Secondly, is via hiring of highly skilled digital talent from leading global technology companies. And thirdly, collaborating through JVs or even acquisition of technology companies to support ours and your aspirations. We are indeed living in exciting times. In the face of adversity sweeping the globe, humankind have found ways to find opportunities to not just survive, but also strive. And in many ways, I'm honored that TM is able to play a meaningful part in supporting Malaysia overcome this pandemic. As leaders, we will continue to find the best path forward for our organization and our nation. And in the midst of it all, let us find new ways to marry technology and human curiosity with forward-thinking leadership to fast-track our country on the digitalization journey. This journey will require the coming together of Malaysians, corporations, the government with technology partners like TM in an open and innovative digital coalition, one that I believe will benefit everyone. And as your preferred technology partner, we at TM are ever ready to serve. I would like to thank you for making time to join us today in LIP Summit. And I hope this event will enrich you with powerful insights and meaningful inspirations for your next big innovation. Thank you to our guest speakers for sharing your invaluable knowledge and experience. To the attendees, I hope you will find the sessions engaging and rewarding right up to the end. Have a great day and take care.
The power of knowing. Creating the ultimate experience has enlightened us about the importance of having people at the center of digital transformation and building a digital coalition for the nation. Thank you, Imri Mokhtar, for your opening address. Right now, allow me to introduce you to your keynote speaker, Shivi Jervis. As an advocate for human-led innovation, she has steered the charge in breathing life to inventions that demonstrated sustainability and promotes ethical values. Her work encompasses digital advances, scientific development, the psychology of brain chemistry, and how these three areas interact with each other. Her topic is user experience, UX, human-centered transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shivi Jervis.
Welcome. I'm Shivi Jervis, and it's a pleasure to be addressing you today. I am a professional business forecaster and the founder of a multi-award-winning innovation lab in the UK. I am delighted to be invited by a progressive organization such as TM1 to address you all. And from what I've learned about the backgrounds of many of you in the audience today, it is absolutely clear that you are a collective of some of the brightest minds in the industry from multiple sectors, be it government, education, hospitality, medicine, finance, and indeed a range of functions as well. But really, you are all decision makers, irrespective of level or position, and hence I see you as change drivers who can create the momentum to rally more meaningful growth in your areas. For over a decade, I've had the privilege to be invited by some of the world's leading organizations and governments to guide, advise, and point them in the direction of what's coming so they can be as informed as possible. I don't believe we can ever be future-proof, but we certainly can be future-ready and anticipate scenarios with the information we have to hand. Now, context is very important, and you might be curious to understand a little about where I'm approaching this from. And indeed, I was with a leading telco for 7 years as a head of digital media. I understand this industry very, very closely. I'm humbled that my research and work has been widely recognized because it gives me a platform to do what truly motivates and drives me, which is to bring to the mainstream attention the most crucial innovations that can drive meaningful change, that create both profit as well as purpose. And I focus on the intersection of three things: digital breakthroughs, scientific innovation, and neuroscience or psychology. So why is that? Because understanding our brain chemistry, our human behavior, truly helps inform the psychology of business that's behind so many of our business decisions. And it certainly enables digital innovations to truly understand and meet human needs on our level. So what are you going to hear about today? This is going to be a session designed to try and stir you out of any Zoom fatigue you may or may not be feeling owing to the events of the past year. So first, we're going to look at which factors make a digital transformation program truly human-centered and successful, given that 60 to 70% of these change programs fail. Then I'll talk you through two developments from digital innovation that I want to really help get you under the hood of, to understand for work and also for our wider lives. One is adaptive AI, the approach that we're taking to be able to augment the role of humans by having software that can understand wider situational context of what we're asking it to do, our productivity software, our virtual assistants, anything that's powered by AI, which is a number of tools, isn't it? I'll next look at how the Internet of Things, or what you and I know of as the connected world, is evolving. This will be a more forward-looking section designed to give you a window into future use cases of the Internet of Things, and my lab and I call this the Internet of Senses. And I'll close it out with some concrete reasons why I believe the future is far more hopeful than you and I might think. Right. Now, I want to start by echoing the extremely eloquent thoughts expressed by Imre earlier, particularly on the present challenges that are being faced by leaders in Malaysia, such as yourselves. And I have two observations here. Having traveled 4 times a month pre-COVID, I was exposed to organizations and governments in opposite ends of the world at times. And let me say that Malaysia has far more in common with other parts of the world than you might think, including your approach in taking such a proactive lead and role to look for ways to come to terms with dealing with the turbulence from COVID and the past 2 years, to find those fresh approaches to function in what has become a hybrid scenario in our way of living and working. And furthermore, I noted your very clear and decisive acknowledgement and action to see digitization grow in its role as a true lifeline for citizens, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's public services, education. It's connecting everyday people to these most vital public services. All the signs and signals show me that Malaysia is very well placed to keep the ship steady during this wave of forces, our social, digital, political, environmental influences that we are experiencing. And indeed, to echo TM1, the future of Malaysia lies not in moving away from this transformation or shying away from risk and experimentation, but actually moving closer to the experimentation to take it forward. You see, only approximately 15% of organizations, as backed up by research, are seen to be truly advancing with digital transformation and getting the most out of it. So we are all still in some of the early stages of discovery in terms of the majority of organization. And I want to commend TM1 and its partners, many of you watching, in taking that stance and lead to be a change driver. Now that we've been referring to these change cycles, what does a human-centered transformation actually look like? I advise organizations on this extremely often. And it's easy to think of this as a concept, but not as simple to understand the different components that make a transformation program successful if you're on the inside rolling it out and you're in the front line, really. But folks like myself, futurists and forecasters, when we can see it from the outside in and we're able to compare and contrast the ones that actually do succeed, then we are able to see some of the traits or elements that the more successful programs had in common that the others perhaps didn't. And indeed, I'm aware that using digital innovation to drive transformation is being positioned by Malaysia as a vital economic catalyst. So this is an important theme for you. So let's look at 3 success factors here for a human-centered digital transformation. The first is we absolutely need to break down an assumption or myth that we have held for many years, which is absolutely wrong and damaging. And that is that digital transformation is an IT challenge. It's just for the CTO and his or her team to handle. Because the success of digital transformation is actually very much about the transformation of human capital and not merely infrastructure rollout. So why is that? Firstly, human-centered technologies can absolutely revolutionize services, public services, industry verticals, but only if the people within the organization that are rolling it out feel equipped to deal with those digital developments. So it has to be an inclusive process. And you'd be shocked at how many organizations don't think to do that or put their people first. Secondly, there's a lot of research that shows a gap in the expectations of board leaders and IT staff. They're sort of sometimes on 2 ends of the spectrum in terms of the pace of deployment, in terms of the method. Indeed, a lot of reports are showing that 73% of leaders agree that while digital transformation needs rapid decision making, it's not only easy to do that if it's just the IT team running with it. It warps the expectations of other business lines and leadership if it's not very much on track, on the agenda of the board, of the most senior decision makers, because not having that clear buy-in very early on has been shown to really slow down the development and testing of the new solutions and hampering things. And again, this may sound logical, but not as many organizations think to do that. They often silo out the CTO or the IT team from the topmost leadership of the organization, and they run into problems 3/4 of a way in. And thirdly, making digital transformation people-led is also then about finding the right talent that are going to have the skill to actually scale up the digital initiatives they were trying to roll out. The number of organizations that don't put talent in place before they roll out a strategic digital program is alarmingly high. And this is happening all the time. Close to 65% of organizations are still looking at digital transformation as an IT exercise. Indeed, just look at this graphic, which represents the priorities in sequence of the majority of organizations' digital transformation journey, and watch where the people element starts to come in. It's second to last. Indeed, we need to be giving all parts of an organization a seat at the table when we are blueprinting such a program, to make sure that we spend as much time on shifting those mindsets of our staff, our customers, our stakeholders, to get them in that receptive state for working alongside these digital advancements. And we've got to invest also in upskilling and reskilling to equip our existing workforce and new talent coming in to have that digital fluency, even if they're not in a technical function, so they can embrace and work alongside digital advances. Because having a workforce that A, isn't receptive to it, B, doesn't have the understanding of it, and many of us, what we don't understand, we fear. This starts to slow down the adoption and hence the actual digital transformation. So what's the next ingredient for digital transformation success, apart from leading with your people? In this extensive analysis that my lab and I have been conducting, we observed that those organizations that focused on not just the digital economy, but another factor, thrived far more. They outperformed their peers. And this is a focus on what we call the moral economy. So what do I mean by this? We're speaking of ethics or morality, moral codes of conduct for an organization. And this might sound a bit like a philosophical concept, and yet it's not. It is tangible, and it does actually impact the reputation and the business and bottom line of a company. So what I mean by this is organizations showing a sense of clarity and action and vocalizing this in the public domain on the ethical values and their responsibilities to the communities in which they operate. So at this point, by the way, alongside continuing the narrative, I want to reflect some of this in a guiding framework that shows you how these factors start to come together, how they're interconnected for your customers, for your internal talent, and more. And this is about humanizing the digital value chain. So, continuing on with the moral obligations aspect and its connection to digital transformation success, we have this responsibility to our talent and our workforce and to wider society. And those organizations whose transformation programs incorporated validating and acknowledging their responsibilities to wider society, the broader ecosystem, had a much better chance of transformations and went the distance. They also were shown to attract 3 times the number of top talent than existing peers and competitors, because when they reflected, they had this social and moral compass, the consciousness about reassessing the values they stand for, particularly generations that are the current generations of talent, Gen X, Gen Z, want to work more for organizations that invest in their social responsibility. So there's a better chance of attracting that sort of talent. And as an example, a retail company that I've advised in the APAC region were overhauling their e-commerce platform, and they chose to offer, upon my advice, 200 external talent, so young people from the community, a chance to work on this rollout to gain valuable work experience. And then there was another telco that I consulted in the UK who took my advice to launch an initiative to bridge the digital divide, meaning those who don't have access to reliable connectivity in rural areas, by giving them free connectivity in areas that had patchy or unreliable broadband. And finally, let's look at the third aspect of human-centered transformation, and this part might surprise you. The majority of the time, you and I make business plans on linear timelines, right? So this is a sequence of events that occurs in chronological order. It's a very ordered view, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's the past moving into the present moving into the future. But there's another timeline that futurists look at, and that's a non-linear timeline, because it factors in what a linear timeline cannot do, which is that many factors in digital transformation actually occur together with unpredictable and variable elements at the same time, concurrently, simultaneously, rather than one after the other. And so the past, the present, and the future start to occur at different points in that timeline. And it's not wrong to look at a linear timeline. We don't have to abandon it completely. It works for most business functions, but we've got to train and plot to learn on non-linear timelines as well. And that gives us a better shot of transformation programs succeeding. It allows you to plot along the short and long term in parallel. It allows you to factor in those many factors of digital transformation that actually are coming in at the same time, that we have to weave in and out of this timeline. And crucially, it's enabling us to build a fluidity into the digital value chain for those organizations that can plot on standard timelines and non-typical timelines like the ones I've described. They have a chance to outperform those when it comes to the success of digital change programs. Right. Let's now switch themes a little from what we've spoken about to do with the elements and ingredients for successful transformation programs and look at the actual innovations that those programs will be rolling out, the digital advances that will help us become future ready. And I'm going to include many real-life examples of how it's already developing and unfolding. So, the first is designed at bridging the gap between man and machine or man and software. This digital advance is something that we are at the cusp of really seeing take off. I've been tracking this for 5 years now, and it's really starting to find its way into tangible business use. This is what my lab and I call adaptive AI, or giving software the ability to have more cognition than before. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean to understand the human way of thinking, how our brains work. This is aimed at augmenting our human efforts at managing our work, our finances, our digital lives. These tools would have the ability to grasp the fuller situational context. And evidence shows that many tech companies, many digital organizations, data companies are incorporating this approach, and it has in many cases led to up to 30% cost savings for the organizations that choose to use these tools that are very human-centered, that are adaptive and really flex to the need of the person using it. Now, while this is a strand of AI, it is also an approach that I believe we're going to see more and more applied to our interactions with digital tools and services. Think of it as giving lines of code, of algorithm, the ability to understand far wider situational context and to decode our needs for a service that is AI powered, which is 80% of digital tools and apps and platforms, right? So it could be a virtual assistant such as Siri, Alexa, Google Cortana. It could be a data science dashboard, a business intelligence tool that your teams are using, social media analytics, navigation software that we use in our cars. All of this then starts to develop much more of an intuitive ability to respond to us humans and really help give us our productivity back and take the tedious processes off our plate. So we want to provide a layer of social intelligence to code here. Now, I believe in show and tell. So let's look at what this can actually do. I crafted a video that has some truly great use cases in action. And all three of these are products that exist today. And I should state I have absolutely no commercial connection to any of these companies. Now you'll see a couple of interesting things here. So let me tee this up. The first thing you'll see are applications to do with customer engagement in the form of evolved virtual assistants and e-commerce bots that actually service your users. And bear in mind, you're going to see the version of it that's the most advanced, which is an actual digital avatar for the e-commerce or the automated bot. However, a lot of organizations can choose to just use that tool in audio form or as a text bot as well. The next one you'll see is a business intelligence tool that tries to learn from how you work. And then finally, the third example is the integration of adaptive AI into road safety software that can read our levels of distraction and fatigue in order to keep us safer behind the wheel. So let's have a watch.
What's my customer number, Jamie?
You can find your customer number on the back of your ANZ debit or credit card. Welcome to Mercedes-Benz. I'm here to help you with your new car.
You look anxious, but rest assured your health is my primary concern.
To deliver more care to more patients for less cost.
So we're not trying to fool people that it is a person, but we're trying to give the biological signals which we respond to. How do we interact with those machines? So they're working on our terms. We're basically putting humans at the center of technology.
When you're responsible for managing complex business processes, you are also responsible for knowledge workers who painstakingly hunt for information hidden from most automation technology. It is able to learn by observing human behavior, taught by humans, to uncover unstructured, hidden data, liberating them to handle exceptions, make the really important decisions only humans can make.
Take us home.
Caro, I will drive.
So that was quite fascinating, wasn't it? To expand on two of the examples you saw intuitive bots. By the way, the company that does this, again, no commercial connection, they're called Soul Machines. They're based in New Zealand, started by the same guy that worked on all the pioneering graphics for Avatar when it first came out, and it was a groundbreaking set of technologies used in filmmaking. So what you saw were intuitive bots that have a real place in customer service. They're also being used for workplace onboarding to be able to help new employees understand the organization, so you don't have to constantly find the head count to be able to take part in all these virtual sessions, and also in our own needs as virtual assistants. We need to take conversational automation from level 1 or 2, which is where they are now, to level 3 or 4. And again, you can use an avatar like the one you saw, which actually has a lifelike human face. Apparently there's a great response to that. You can also choose not to have that and just have it in audio or text form. The point of it is it has a computational ability to understand very clearly what the person is asking, rather than the very stilted back and forth that many of us get when we try to interact with the automated customer engagement service of any organization. And the idea is for adaptive AI systems to be available 24/7, outside of the confines of the 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 that you have available for your customer service representatives. And the point is also, it doesn't replace the human, but it can service a customer when the human isn't available, helping many of us not hold on to a call for 35 minutes, but also in many cases acting as the first point of contact and then passing it on to an actual person at the right time. The other use case you saw caters to how you and I are knowledge workers. We're pulling out information from 10 different sources and formats into a presentation or a report or an analysis, even to inform the bullet points that we share by email. But adaptive AI software starts to learn from how you work. Which pieces of information do you prioritize? What do you qualify as important data? And it starts to pull this together almost as though you had a colleague that really just had the full-time role of drafting all these important documents for you. And then you just came in to sign things off before it was sent out. I mean, that can be shown to save us over 15 man hours per week. And an example that you didn't see, finally, is the use of adaptive AI in e-learning platforms, where no two people learn the same way, right? We all have individualized ways of learning, and the system can adapt to those unique ways that we have of absorbing information and deliver us the training in the way that each of us respond to best. Now, let me say that with adaptive AI, there is a caveat here. We've got to be mindful of ethical oversight of new applications of innovation. So at all times, we've got to design these tools at the very start in a way that factors in that digital integrity, the mindfulness of data privacy and those responsibilities. But really the purpose is that it is reading us better. These digital systems are grasping the nuances and decoding our needs better. Now we move on to the next generation of connectivity and the Internet of Things. And I want to talk you through some of the tangible, fascinating, realistic use cases that are a bit more progressive of where connectivity is enabling meaningful impact and where it'll start to become more mainstream in the next 3 years. Now, I know Malaysia in particular has a 5G rollout planned on a phased basis from December onwards. So this will be particularly relevant for you. When we have the firepower from high-speed connectivity and low latency, which is core to many of the services here, but then it starts to pair together with different technological advancements such as immersive reality tools, so augmented reality, which is overlaying the digital world into our real world, or robotics or advanced data science. That's when it starts to open up this ability to connect aspects that were perhaps not conceivable beforehand. And this then starts to become the evolution of our connected world, or what you and I know of as the Internet of Things, taking it into an Internet of Senses, where it's connecting our people, it's connecting our places, even our bodies and our skills, to be transmitted across the web to where it's needed the most. And these are already unfolding now. So let's look at some illustrations of this that bring the real value to life for you. For instance, let's take an impact on the area of our lives that really influences our day-to-day, and that's our cities, the everyday ecosystem that we inhabit when we walk out the door. And much like we want to prevent security issues from taking place on our mobiles and threatening our digital identity, we're developing the ability to prevent issues before they become a serious problem in our cities. So connected sensors tracking air pollution and alerting councils ahead of time to issues. Data gathered live from traffic and road usage to increase safety and give fair warnings. And we're also seeing the use here of something more fascinating, which already exists today, which has existed for the past decade, but it's really ramping up in its advancement, which is digital twin models. You know, imagine if you and I could have an exact digital replica of our body, and then we could test all sorts of health and fitness endurance tests and activities on it, and be sure of the exact impact and results of each before we did it in real life. Very handy, I think. But applying that to our cities has really transformative impact. Digital twin models can offer this replica down to the last detail, with information feeding into those servers and systems that are coming in live from all the servers that are connected to the sewage systems, the traffic systems, to citizen services. So we can then virtually test how certain changes would affect the city in real life. And this is now becoming more advanced, allowing governments to do vast amounts with connectivity, even with future pandemics. Indeed, I hosted a documentary for Discovery Channel a few years ago where we explored the use of this in the city of Singapore as a case study. Next, let me present a different vision, which may seem a little far-fetched, but is rooted in reality and growing case studies. This is what we term the tactile internet. Pardon me. And here we're talking about transmitting not just content, but experiences, the sense of touch across the web. Think about that. It isn't something we've been able to do before. Now, before I even explain this, I'm going to play a video that brings this to life and then give you some narrative on that. So what you saw there is you would have a surgeon who either controls a robotic arm on one end or wears what called a haptic glove, a simple thin glove full of sensors, and when they move their hands and fingers in a certain way, the exact procedure and process is replicated by a robotic arm at the other end of the world, overseen by a surgeon that's local to the patient, down to the same millimeters breadth of movement. And life-saving surgery like this is taking place. It's also being trialed to teach those skills that count on transmission of touch via our hands. So, for example, engineers or medics or even pianists, as you saw. And the last evolution of connectivity that I want to bring to your attention is a bit more to do with your personal lives, to do with your health. So, what we could perhaps call the Internet of Bodies. And this is connecting the inner workings of our bodies safely to connectivity, to the internet. And I can assure you this isn't from the uncanny valley. It is happening as we speak. So as an example, we're seeing the development and indeed the FDA approval in the US of digital pills. And these are safe to swallow pills made of digestible material, carrying tiny safe sensors that can transmit vital information to our phones, to our clinicians. And when you swallow the pill, it hits your stomach, the acid environment in your stomach activates the onboard sensor in the pill. And what the digital pill could do is warn us hours in advance of serious things that are about to happen, like a seizure or a heart attack, allowing us to pull over our car or get somewhere public or call for help. But in the long term, when it's connected to the internet, it could actually track trends over the population, research causes and preventions for many illnesses with permission from the user, of course, and to be able to alert you of the very early signs of disease well before symptoms even develop. So it could be truly life-saving. So these are just a few very forward-facing but very realistic applications from the connected world that form from the Internet of Things, what I call the Internet of Senses, allowing us to send these sensory elements across with tangible business use cases. Right, as we start to draw to a close, from all that you've heard today, you will have your own subjective insights that you as Malaysian leaders will be taking away from these scenarios that I've presented. And when we talk of these future ecosystems, such a big role is played by organizations such as the ones that you are at the forefront of. And here, in particular, I must give a shout out to TM1. I believe they're truly at the vanguard as an example of taking transformation forward across Malaysia's commercial and public sectors. And they're truly a thought leader in developing and demonstrating that an important element of empowering our digital journey is humanizing that value chain. The past 2 years have been turbulent for many of us. But there have also been some hidden opportunities that have emerged that I hope you will have heard of today. When we examine the impact of all the industrial revolutions that have taken place, including the fourth industrial revolution, that we are more than halfway through at the moment, we observe that those change cycles, those transformation programs that have prioritized truly starting their programs with their people, are able to create scenarios that are inclusive, that have societal progress and profit moving at the same pace, to fix pain points before they become a serious roadblock to digital adoption. And they're able to do something that as futurists we do on a daily basis. We have to help advise organizations to course correct, meaning to quickly adapt things when something isn't going right. Now, as a key takeaway, you've heard of the factors today that go towards creating more human-centered organizations, and you've learned of some of the innovation processes and thinking that should be on our radar. And here I want to play a video that reminds us of something truly pivotal, that at the core of all of this, what motivates us is elevating our individual potential and that of wider society to enhance and lift society with the products and services that we're rolling out. And this isn't just feel-good sentimental stuff or for the CSR programs of organizations. Many of you are recognizing that it is what organizations and governments are truly waking up to. And indeed, the pressure from a very difficult pandemic has actually forced some of this reassessment of values, and that's one of the benefits that's come from it. Let's have a watch of this video.
Hi everyone, I'm just testing if you can hear me clearly. All good? Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. My Bluetooth screwed up just before getting on, of course. That's what happens.
Hi everyone. Have fun.
Even the soundtrack of that video is, for me, very moving. It is indeed humanity that must be maintained and championed in this connected world, even as we become more digital and digital technologies start to become more human. Actually, we are at risk of becoming automated humans if we strip the human spirit out of it. You know, moving forward, Malaysia's market dynamics are changing, which often reflects what is happening in the rest of the world. Some of them are, of course, unique scenarios to Malaysia as well. But all of us can strengthen our position if we review and refresh how we want to adapt to both short-term and long-term changes with some of those insights that I've shared with you today. And more than ever, in these disruptive times of change, it's collaboration with the right partner that is possibly one of the biggest key factors to successfully becoming future ready. You can't be future-proof, but you can be future ready. And for those of you watching, you're a hand-picked group today of true decision makers, and you're incredibly well placed here to be change drivers. There is hope to be found in these wonderful digital and scientific innovations that you're already undertaking and plan to undertake in the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years, and to shape the scenario that our future generations will inherit. That chance is very much in your hands. Thank you so much to TM1 for inviting me to speak today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish I could have been there in person, but this is truly the next best thing. You're able to see me addressing you virtually face to face. And I hope you've taken away some great insights. Any questions, please feel free to pop me an email. I'm always reachable, shivi@futurescape248.com. That should come up on screen now as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Shivi, for sharing with us your strategies on taking a human-centered approach to digital transformation with UX, human-centered transformation. Indeed, nuggets of wisdom for our audience members who are changing their mindsets in the adaptation towards the new digital economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we now continue with our panel discussion, and the topic is UX, user experience, the design of everyday things. Allow me to introduce you to your panel of speakers. The genius behind the first Apple Store. He has won multiple international design awards. He has been at the forefront of strategic design for decades and believes that design should create a positive experience for everyone. We welcome Tim Kobe. Next on our panel is an innovator and technology leader. He has invigorated startups and ignited corporate innovation with his vast international experience in driving innovative growth across different sectors of a myriad of industries. We say good morning to Shamsul Ishan Abdul Majid. Our third and final panelist has been entrusted to provide insights, analysis, and strategies to top-tier companies globally. His experience in strategies and tactical approach to penetrate and win over new markets has made him and his knowledge invaluable. We say hello, Sudef Banga. And moderating this conversation is a futurist and an authority in digital innovation and transformation. He is a firm believer that businesses should equip themselves by learning about emerging technologies in order to create better value for their consumers. The topic, UX, user experience, the design of everyday things. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incomparable Manoj Menon. Manoj, all yours.
Excited to host such a wonderful set of panelists on this session. You know, technology has exceeded humanity. This is what Albert Einstein said, and he said it almost 80 years ago. Yeah? Technology has exceeded humanity. 80 years later today, we live in a world of AI where we want the computers to talk, see, behave like human beings. So have we really gone too far? And that is really the topic of today's conversation. What is this human experience? What does it really mean to be? Is it about stories? Is it about feeling? Is it about imagination? What makes us so different? And how do we imbibe that into, the way we run our businesses? And that is the theme. So hopefully through this session, I want to help address three questions, What is it? Why do we really need to do it? As he said, have we gone too far with technology? And what are the best practices? How should we go about doing it? So before I kickstart, I think we got a very formal introduction to the three wonderful humans with me on this panel. Maybe I should start by saying, introducing the human in each of them. So maybe start with you, Tim. Tim, what kind of a human are you? How would you describe yourself?
Well, I think my probably the way I would describe myself is simply a father of six who probably spends every day looking at human outcomes and dealing with the human experience. So that's probably where I would start.
Thank you, Tim. Shamshul?
Well, the human of me is someone who just loves to see the world on how different cultures and different societies experience themselves and experience the nature around them. There's not enough days in a year and years in my life that I would like to really have to really see the world for what it is.
Excellent. And Sudhir?
Well, I guess I'll describe myself as an aspiring rock star for the past 25 years. Still going to continue to do that. I'll shamelessly plug my Instagram here. Please go follow me. Make my dreams come true.
Oh, wow. Excellent. We'll talk about your rockstar capabilities. Fortunately, there's AI to help you on the way, Sudhir. Maybe we start with Tim. Tim, all of us today are so curious. You spent 12 years working with maybe what we revere as someone who really made what we call as the best in human experience. So what was it like, working with him? What made him so successful? What was that leadership style that, that got him to achieve this kind of an extraordinary success?
Well, I guess, there are many things. You're speaking of Steve Jobs, of course, but, I think probably one of the strongest things that I would attribute to his success is the ability to think in both an analytical type of framework as well as an intuitive one. And I think it's that interesting balance within his mind to look at either condition and ensure that it works both from an analytical perspective, but also from that intuitive perspective. And I would say 9 times out of 10, trust his intuition over the analytics, as the outcome.
Awesome. And, Tim, one of the things maybe when we read his biographies, Steve Jobs was known to, maybe we perceive him to have been autocratic, to have taken decisions a lot by himself. And, it's almost a decade since he gave up and, he passed away. And yet we see today, Apple has grown so exceptionally well under Tim Cook. So what is it that, what is it about that leadership style that has helped Apple continue to be such a sustainable growth company, still imbibing a lot of those traits of human-centered experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably one of the greatest things that he did was to set up a culture at Apple that was something that would extend beyond him. And I think the difficulty for most leaders are to, goes back to defining the culture that you want to be known for, the things that you want to be delivering, and set up a system of team of teams who can help you deliver that. So I would say that was probably one of the key aspects.
Excellent, Tim. You know what, Tim? I will request you to maybe share a few insights on building this human-centric experience, and then we will rejoin with the panelists to take some perspective. So, Tim, maybe over to you for the next 8 or 10 minutes.
Sure. I'm happy to talk about this. What I put together today is something built around the idea of return on experience. A lot of people maybe look at it from a business perspective and say that this is kind of a soft, nice to have element. But I think it's been fundamentally the key to the success that we've seen with virtually all of our clients, not just Apple, but Virgin, banks, you name it, across the different business categories. And a big part of that is recognizing that the experience you're creating is ultimately the value that people are engaging with. And we use and believe that design can actually help improve or increase that value. And that if we do it well, it actually contributes to progress in terms of the way that we think, feel, and do things. So if you're designing human experience, the first part is understanding what design is. I think a lot of people think about design as the way something looks or the way something feels. But one of the things that Steve taught us and reinforced, over those years was that design is really what it does for people. The purpose that you're delivering on through the design is really the fundamental key here. And so it's not just the look and feel, but it's how something works. And what you're typically doing if you're designing human experience is you're designing it for people. For this to be effective and to work for people, you have to understand the types of things that influence behavior, that influence the things beyond our kind of analytical part of our brain, but start to influence the things that drive behavior, maybe the things that don't have the capability for language. And so it's looking at a more primitive part of the brain as a way of deepening and building relationships between people. And this goes back to that point that was made earlier about focusing on the human part, of human outcomes. And the third part is that we find that experience is a very powerful thing. Marshall McLuhan talks about it. Experience rather than understanding is the part that actually influences the way we behave and the way we interact with companies. And so the experience that you have with a product or a service is a very important thing, and it actually has exponential value in terms of the outcome. So if you talk about experience, it's a point of understanding what is it, and it's ultimately an expression of a core set of values that people feel. You talked about part of the success that Steve had with Apple was communicating the values of what the company stands for across every touch point. And that becomes an essential part of how any brand engagement is designed and is structured. And one of the things that we look at is something that's often not considered maybe best practice, although it probably should be, but many companies tend to emulate one another. Many CEOs spend a lot of time working on a differentiated product. The problem is they turn around and deliver it in the same way as their peers. And when they do that, they create parity in the industry, and ultimately the consumers don't see a difference between those things that are done across different brands in a particular sector. So what we're looking for, what are the things that make you stand out? What are the things that make you different within a competitive environment? The second thing that we look at is this idea of emotional connections, and these are the things that build relationships. Historically, brands and companies spend a lot of time focused on transactions because transactions naturally convert to financial impact. But the way to generate those transactions is really ultimately through a relationship. So what we want to do is look at the things that you often have that drive strong relationships and bring those to the forefront of the experience that you're creating for a company. And ultimately, if you do that, great human outcomes will lead to the business outcomes. So the money is always there, the money always comes. But what it is making sure that the values the company represents aligns with the values that the people they're trying to connect with have. And that across each touch point, those values and the things that your customers appreciate are being considered and designed into the experience that you're creating for them. And we typically start with something we call value creation engine. And this goes back to, design having a framework or a structure, delivering on a purpose. And ultimately, it's defining what are those human outcomes that make your company valuable, the things that other people value about you, and then defining the strategy to deliver on those outcomes, and then ultimately the tactics that support that strategy. So we tend to look at any conversation by framing the comments into this structure. And if we do, there are many tangible ways to define value. So of course, the most important one that most companies want to see is bottom line value. And it certainly does translate to stronger relationships, will lead to more successful interactions with your customers. It's certainly been the case with Apple. For Virgin, it was about differentiating yourself across the airline sector in a way that would allow them to stand out, even though they didn't have the money, they didn't have the routes, they didn't have a lot of the things that their bigger competitors might have had. They were consistently in the top 5 in terms of the experience that was created for them. If value is foot traffic, then looking at the experience to help generate foot traffic. This was a criteria for the Nissan Experience Center in Tokyo, and they wanted to go from 30,000 visitors a month to 40. We changed the paradigm around this entire model and ended up with 1 million visitors in the first 4 months. And the last piece here is using it to obtain market share. This is for Globe Telecom in the Philippines, but moving from the number 3 telco brand in the market to the first one, and being able to shift from selling the pipes as you typically do in a telco environment to delivering on the emotion that the pipes deliver. So ultimately, return on experience can generate multiple forms of value, and that designing with that in mind as part of the intent will create the greater outcomes. And I think the column on the far right is probably the most important here, which is if you do this successfully, you're going to have greater engagement, creating a positive emotional experience, much greater conversion. You're going to build much more advocacy, having other people sell your brand and your products and services. And also importantly, 5 times more likely for people to forgive you when you make a mistake, which we always do. So I think that this is ultimately the value of focusing on design through human experience. And I think if you do this well, this is the best way that we know to create value for any company that's out there.
Excellent. Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Tim. Tim, you talked about the framework and you talked about how to separate the tactics from the overall strategy. So one of the things that people talked about a lot, or where we struggle in Asia, particularly, is with the execution, the implementation, and we have understood that Steve Jobs himself was very rigorous in his weekly meetings and spend hours and hours together in an iterative manner. Can you tell us a little bit about that discipline of execution and what it takes to deliver and execute on this huge huge strategic change that you bring about in your company?
Well, I think that there's probably a number of different methods for creating value in that way. The first is framing it around the outcomes, as I mentioned. But, ultimately, that point of differentiation, every time that, we would be in a team meeting and Steve would ask, what would the competitors do? Somebody would give him a textbook answer on what the competitive, what should everyone do as they're taught in school. And the first thing he'd do would say, well, then we can't do that. We have to do something different. And so his point of view was to always, go a different direction than where he saw the industry. And I think that differentiation was very much a strategic tactic on his side to be able to ensure that Apple would stand out from the competitive environment and stay away from commoditizing what it was that he was offering.
Excellent. Hey, thank you very much, Tim. I encourage the audience to, type your comments, leave some questions, and we will engage with you as we go along. So please do that. Maybe I would like to now invite Shamshul. Shamshul, you've worked in the private sector. You are now in public sector, and over the last 18 months, we have seen a huge transformation, even in how public services are delivered. So maybe you could start off by telling us, where are we today in our journey to deliver these human-centered experiences, particularly for citizens in our country?
Thank you, Manoj, and thank you for inviting me to this esteemed event. I moved from the private sector to the public sector for one main reason. I have a dream that the public sector, being the largest employer of the country, would make that big leap for a more experienced society with a lot of digital innovation, not just led by private sector, but also by the public sector. To your point on where is Malaysia today when it comes to public services, I suppose most Malaysians could relate when COVID-19 came in and all of us were scrambling for a single point of information. And this is where my Sejahtera gave us that beacon of light, started 2 years ago. But from there, many parties have understood that the nation itself requires more than that, beyond my Sejahtera, for many more types of information, not just COVID related. So I'm quite sure some Malaysians out there have received some sort of a SMS a few months ago to respond to a survey for a national super app. That's part of our exercise to understand what is the public's requirement moving forward when it comes to a single point of all digital information. From that survey, I would like to share here that, for example, 84,000 people responded, which 92 of them said, yes, I would like to use a national super app. And of those 94, basically, most of them request that the National Super App focuses on government services, education, health, and key concerns around data privacy, guidance on government transaction. And this is where we see that user experience or customer experience certainly comes front center. The National Super App like that, or any super app or mobile apps, would certainly focus on how would the outcome be when it comes to experiences. MCMC itself in 2022 will be doing something around human-centered approach, and that will be something of an experience center that we will reveal when the time comes, so that we can put experiences front and center, not just having technology as the driving force, but experience, mindset, and culture as something to drive further innovation and society change.
Excellent, Shamshul. Thank you very much for that. So as you look into the future, you're saying the innovation opportunities are likely to be in the form of these super apps and transforming the citizen journeys and embedding it all inside. So as Malaysian citizens, many of the people on this session today, we can experience connected journeys across multitude of citizen services all in one place.
Yeah, so to carry forward on that point, I would say one of the opportunities for innovation behind all those new development is data sharing and data governance. And this is where MCMC itself, internally, we have started to embrace an initiative called Data-Driven Organization, focus on data culture, data maturity, data collaboration, because it's not enough that we have to look at reports of the past, but we need to see into the future, having the predictive capability, and hence where once more data sharing appears between silos of data or agencies, then this is where I would say more innovation would transpire.
Excellent. Thank you, Shamsul. Hey, Sudev, you have a broader canvas. You play around, ASEAN, and you have the luxury of having that perspective around a range of countries from Singapore all the way to Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia. Where are we in this journey of human-centered experience in the region?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. I'm glad Sam cited some data. I don't want to be the boring data guy on this panel. But I think Southeast Asia, especially around since the pandemic and towards the end of 2020, there's been quite a bit of acceleration around an interest into UX and the enhancement around CX as well. We've seen quite a bit of investments, actually more than 60% of organizations across in Southeast Asia that we paneled out and surveyed have said that they are going to increase a lot of investments into technologies that's going to enable CX as well as to increase UX for their customers. A lot of this is around loyalty. A lot of this is around customer engagement, of which they felt they lost within the 6-month period from March towards the end of the year. So these investments are going to increase. The concern around those investments is that they're very technology-focused investments. And then when we talk about human-centered design, we talk about human-centered organizations, a lot of emotions and a lot of non-technology discussions should actually occur. So we don't see a lot of those discussions accelerating at this point. However, a lot of discussions around the technology is accelerating. And when we look specifically into Malaysia, I was cross-checking some of the data before this panel. Malaysia is across the 5 big Southeast Asian countries. Malaysia is one of the countries where the ownership around UX and CX, there's an expectation for IT to own that process rather than the LOBs and business. So going, in relation to the first keynote where the discussion was around moving that away from IT, and it's a more holistic engagement that has to occur across organizations. It's a little bit slower than the discussions around the technology per se. So that's where we are at this point.
And who is leading the way, Sudev? Which companies or which governments, who is leading the way? And let's say, share with us some insights on companies and individuals or best practices.
Yeah, UX, CX, we see a lot of this in the insurance sector. That's been occurring quite a bit. Indonesia, for example, there's been some companies I've spoken with who have actually started to move this forward. A lot of them have embarked on design thinking workshops prior to this over the past 3 years. But obviously, the evolution of that is to include more empathy and putting people at the center of things, isn't it? So when we cut across Southeast Asia, a lot of organizations who are the local-based organizations, non-MNC organizations, are still very focused on MVPs, and a lot of it is to actually get out that product to see what is going to be different and what's going to sell. And it's at no fault of theirs because, again, more than 73% of consumers want a differentiated experience with an organization. It's just how they're approaching it is more towards, again, a very product-centric view rather than a human-centered view. And we do expect that to change. Again, we are seeing MNCs who have global practices brought down into Southeast Asia. They are starting to bring a lot of these practices. To Tim's point earlier on, it was around, there's a lot of copying going on, but how do you differentiate yourself rather than to be just one of the pack? That we have not seen just yet, but we expect that to move. And I think TM1 wanting to brand themselves that way in a manner of being human-centered. Hey, you're one of the guys in front right now. So good on TM1 at this point.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sudev. As Shamsul was speaking, I was trying to relate and think, when you think about government services, none of us are excited if you have to make a visit to any government office. And at the other extreme, you have Tim talking about the Nissan store and the Apple store. So I was just led to think, Tim, is any government creating such an experience for their citizen? Or if they're not, where do you think, or what do you think, what is the future there? Can we expect an Apple-like store experience from any government around the world? Is somebody leading the way? Is somebody doing something unique?
Well, I think in government it's maybe tougher because you don't have the competitive environment, whereas in commerce, when one competitor makes a move, most of the others have to follow just to stay in the game. But I think there are countries who are making an effort at creating a better engagement, particularly through the digital experience. And it's not. I don't think everyone is doing that, or maybe be as focused on it. But I know that some smaller cities, I can think of Australia, I can think of other locations, are really making that effort because they see themselves somewhat in competition with other cities in their country. And so I think there is some competitive pressure there, but maybe not enough to push it very rapidly. But I think if you're looking at good outcomes as a result of what you're designing, you have to be looking at in this area as well. I think it's interesting. Dubai has a minister of happiness, and her remit is to make sure that people are satisfied with their government. And so having somebody there overseeing the interactions is probably a great start.
Wow, I love that, Minister of Happiness. That will be a new KPI. So Shamshul, we can expect something like that happen here, I think.
Fingers crossed, I would say.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and Sudev kind of touched on it. He talked about the importance of data, and maybe the follow-on question from there is, the democratization of data, and I think Shamshul also alluded to it, to enable that collaboration between agencies. That's such a big part of this human-centered design. So how should companies go about making that possible? Sudev, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, again, the point is to definitely move away from an infrastructure discussion. Although infrastructure is a very important component, the technology component, it is critical, but it's going back to the idea on what the data is going to be used for and what the goals of the organization is for that data. Democratization of data is really, I think the quote is to remove the gatekeeper, isn't it? And to make sure that every single individual is able to access and use that data in a manner to innovate. Are organizations ready for that at this point in time? In Southeast Asia, no, they're a little bit more conservative. But obviously, there are privacy discussions to talk about. There's data access discussions to talk about for many organizations. So right now, I think the concerted view is for many companies to just view how they want to use data, for what purpose, and to achieve what. And that would form the fundamental strategy before getting into the tactics of it. Let's not get into the tactics and investments before that is firmly put in place. And then that can follow later on.
Excellent. Yeah. I've got an interesting question here. It says 50% of all consumer purchase decisions are based on word of mouth. 80% of word of mouth is generated by direct experience. So how do you connect that emotional connection strategy? Is the answer there storytelling? Is storytelling the means to connect all of this together? I think, Tim, this is really up your alley.
Yeah, that's a statistic we refer to quite frequently. But I think that the point of this is that if you're not focusing on what are the outcomes that you're creating, then you're probably leaving money on the table. What that says is word of mouth, we know, is a very valuable thing, but the way for it to register is directly through the experience. So in many cases, the experience is a sort of a default outcome of a whole bunch of different tactics, as opposed to the primary objective. I think what we have to do is look at inverting that and being able to focus on the outcomes at the primary level. To me, it goes back to the way we talk about technology. I think we've all forgotten to some degree what technology is, because to a large degree, we talk about a technical capability as if that's technology. But technology is a combination of the technical capability and then the outcomes that it creates for people. And the technology that you remember, the technology that matters to us culturally, throughout history, has been technology that not only had a technical capability to improve things, but actually delivered on improving things. And I think we have to continue to remind ourselves that was one of the core things that I know Steve focused on with any technology is did it provide a value that was something that people, whether they knew they needed it or not, would see as a benefit to the way they live.
Excellent. Let me go with one of the other first questions, and this is more targeted at Sudev, I believe. And maybe even Shamshul can comment on it. It says, after implementing of 5G services in Malaysia, the cost of internet service provider, will it be reliable or will it be so much more expensive than before? So while there's a lot of promise of that technology, what is your take on it? Do you think it'll become more expensive?
It definitely sounds like a Shamsul question.
I'll go ahead first, Sudev.
Sure. Well, for me to go ahead, okay. Yeah. So, sorry, I misheard you there. So, well, I mean, 5G. Listen, I mean, this is my honest take around it. And I just think right now, for many countries, when we talk about 5G use cases, that needs to improve. The current use cases touted for the experience and the advantage of 5G for many Southeast Asian countries, unfortunately, is not compelling enough for the industry to want to recognize the need for 5G at this juncture. There's a lot of promise around what it can do. We speak about hypercriticality of data, and that is not going away. That is something that is going to be very important for data-sensitive sectors, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the public sector. There's going to be many industries that are going to require that low latency and the usage of 5G. That evolution is going to take a bit of time. So the use case and the experience around 5G, at least from our vantage point, that has to be improved in the discussions from many governments in Southeast Asia, not just Malaysia, but for many governments across Southeast Asia. As long individuals are still talking about speed when it comes to 5G, and they're talking about lesser buffering on their YouTube or Netflix or whatever they're watching at this point in time, you don't have the right use cases around 5G. So that has to change. The compelling need really has to change. On pricing, I really don't have a comment. I apologize. That's not something I could answer, but I'll hand it over to Sam now.
Thank you, Sudev. And I think you touch upon those key factors, which is use case. And MCMC, we have observed that how 5G has been sold in various packages outside Malaysia, in Thailand, for example, in South Korea, and all of them are still finding their footing. They started off 5G earlier, and it has to go beyond the standard EMBB, enhanced mobile broadband. It has to go into the ultra low latency and massive machine type communication, where it's beyond consumer use. Industries need to come together and explore as many use cases as possible, which will definitely make the pricing that is on the table to be more competitive, that could go even the long haul and have more players. That basically brings use cases down to a lot more industries. It's an exciting space from MCMC's perspective, because it brings, or it would transition the industry from 2G, 3G, and we are sunsetting 3G right now, so that we can make space for 5G and all that it promises and what we have seen outside Malaysia as well.
Excellent. One of the key things when we talk about frictionless service, what comes in the way is security. There is so much of fraud, internet fraud in financial services, people stealing ID, phishing. It's become a huge challenge. And as a result, it is creating more friction in the delivery of experiences. So what are the innovation opportunities available, and what challenges are there, and how do we overcome it? Any insights? Tim, you want to talk about how you have addressed Apple takes security and privacy so seriously, and that is one of their key differentiators in a way as well.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to speak for Apple in terms of how they go about this, but I think that what they've done, which I think others can do, is recognize that there's a huge opportunity here. Anytime that there's enormous amount of friction in a particular type of practice, there's an opportunity for a workaround. And when you do that, and if Apple has tried to build their reputation on trusting them with your information. And I think, building trust in a relationship is an incredibly powerful thing. Steve used to say, brands are only about one thing, and that's trust. So when you lose trust, as you see with some of the struggles that Mr. Zuckerberg is going through, it's very hard to get back that audience to believe in what you're doing. And so you have to demonstrate that. And if you have a technology that enables that to be a less friction enabled thing, this was the promise of biometrics and other types of technologies. The idea that somebody still has to create a password is a pretty archaic thing. I think it's right up there with a pull-down menu in terms of old technology. But I think that this is the kind of thing where, to me, it's screaming for an opportunity as a solution.
Sudev, Shamsul, anybody wants to comment?
If I may step in, we've seen the use of digital signature, which has an act that MCMC helps to govern, and digital signature uptake is getting more due to aspiration by the government via My Digital and others. But we've seen also that it takes the level of security to a next level, at least here for Malaysia. We have the government itself is looking into the establishment of the national digital ID, which takes the digital signature to the next level, and this would actually free up or give rise to more opportunities for data to flow. And here is where future in policies, framework around data governance and data sharing, which puts security front and center around each packet of data as it flows, which then goes together with the digital ID, which helps more of us in this country to enjoy beyond the physical construct that we have today.
Excellent. Yeah, I think some of our audiences want to put this panel on a spot. Yeah, there's a question related to the government, which says, what is the panel's views on what the current government can do in terms of policies to popularize human-centered technology in the market? If we see this as a game changer, we see an opportunity. What can the government do at a national level to embrace this in a bigger way? Tim, if you're made the Prime Minister of Malaysia tomorrow, what would you do?
I think what's important is for people to feel that they have the ability to influence change, and whether that's through a suggestion or whether that's through a vote or whatever it may be. But I think that you want to give people the opportunity to share their opinions, and for their opinions to be heard, and to be transparent about that. And I think it's going to create a more inclusive society in many ways. But I think that you want to use the technology in such a way as opposed to make them feel like they're being tracked or being suffer some retribution as a result of it, as other countries have done. So I think it's important to establish, again, much in the way that companies' greatest value is trust. The greatest way to keep a government, empowered is to trust the people that they're governing and give them that power.
Hey, thank you, Shamsul, Sudev.
If I could just add to that, and I'll just link it up a little bit to the question you had before as well, around security and innovation. I think quite immediately, I think leading by example is going to be very critical. And if you look at governments across the globe, those who are trying to be a little bit more citizen-centric and heighten their citizen engagement via digital, a lot of innovation is being done within the government sector itself. Within internal services, between departments, between agencies, as well as then externally, so that everything is linked up. And then owing to that, when you think around innovation, you think about the data that is being collected and the data that's being used. That's where the security tandem actually comes in and has to play very much in unison with that innovation. I guess this more simplistic message around that is that, even for organizations considering innovation in this period, sitting on a lot of data, the only thing you won't play with is customer data. That's just something that you will never play with. Sandbox it, experiment on it, pilot it out. And very similarly, I think the government should lead by example by doing that. Integrating different agencies and the information they have and bringing that out as an experience to us, the citizens. Being a Malaysian myself, I would enjoy that. And I think a lot of organizations will be able to hop on and follow that example very quickly if should that occur.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that question, in recent times, there's been a lot of emphasis on digital. And one of the questions that has come in is people are spending incredible amounts of time in training. And there is skilling and reskilling. Is it working? Because if we are all spending so much of time getting trained, inherently we should have made so much more progress. Are we doing it the wrong way? And it relates to something even at the national level. So what is it? What are the best practices, and what should you keep in mind as you embrace this correctly?
So I'll keep my answer brief, I guess. I'm sure the other panelists have a very good answer around this, but from my perspective is the reskilling and retraining. There are two schools of thought about this. One is so-called future proofing, or being ready for the future and having the right skill sets to tackle that. The other point around it is to actually look at your current skill sets and see how you can proliferate from the existing skill sets and eventually evolve those skill sets into the future. You look at the BPO or ITO industries. You look at some data center you look at data center investments in two countries. They don't walk in a country based on the number of data center engineers there are in that country. They don't do that. There are other compelling factors and other economic factors why they actually, an organization would invest to build a data center. So I think it's a little bit of a balancing act that we need to look at the current capabilities and where that suits and what opportunities there are available for Malaysia to grow and proliferate with those current skill sets. And towards the other end, to also be future ready and evolve those skill sets with emerging technologies and new technologies coming in. So that's my brief part.
And if I may chip in, obviously, yes, a lot of organizations and the government itself is going to various types of upskilling and reskilling. And I would say the key here is leadership. Leadership in a micro scale within the organization, perhaps even within the divisions or the department, and also leadership on a macro scale. Where is the organization going? Where is the country going? What is the outlook that would require some of these skills to plug in? And obviously, we're talking about human upskilling here, where it takes time. It's not like in a movie Matrix, where you can just download within 10 seconds and you've known what to do. So upskilling requires that vision for the leader to pull that team of people towards where the organization is going. But at the same time, upskilling without having the ability to actually use those skills is also a shame. And this is where the leaders needs to create that space where upskilling is used immediately. Instead of, you go for some course and you come back and you can't use it. So I find that leadership holds one of the most important key in where upskilling and reskilling is going.
So, Tim,
and I would just add that I agree with that point in terms of the leadership, and I think it's also important to recognize some key things, because if we're reskilling in the same way that we used to, we're probably in big trouble. if we're taking one hat and putting on a different hat, that's not reflecting the fact that we're going through basically rates of exponential change in culture and technology. This is not something that is going to slow down, but only accelerate. And I think it's terrifying to people. And we've seen political fallout in the U.S. and other places where people are afraid of what's going on around them and the loss of jobs and livelihoods and things. And so I think it's really important to recognize that, Thomas Friedman, who's an author from the New York Times, wrote a piece called Thank You for Being Late. And he talks about the idea of what we need to adopt is not a process that's very much like the Industrial Revolution era approach to how we reskill and remodel our society, but to create something called dynamic stability. That the stability that we're looking for, that everyone is sort of craving, comes from the fact that it's a dynamic condition. And so what that means is that the skills that are being defined and created have to be able to respond to a rapidly changing world and an increasingly rapidly changing world. And the idea that you're just going to wear one hat and go out and now do that for the next 20 years, those days are probably past. And so what we have to do now is to think about a new way of communicating the skills that are going to be needed in a dynamic stability type of environment.
Correct. And Tim, one of the other questions that has come up from the audience is you talked about return on experience and measuring that return on experience. In a B2B environment, how do you apply that in a B2B environment?
Well, to me, the translation is very natural. We hear this question periodically, but there are many companies. If you're a B2B customer, you're not serving your client is just another customer, right? So you're setting up the experience that you have with your customer in a way that's going to increase the ability for them to stay with you, to buy your products, to buy your services. And so the experience that if you're a vendor to a larger manufacturer, for example, you still need that relationship. And so a big part of this is focusing on relationship management, whether it's at B2B or B2C levels, and recognizing that, if other people are thinking on your behalf and empowering you to be more successful, that's going to be a company or an individual you're going to want to do additional business with. So it works, in my view, across B2B or B2C.
One of the biggest challenges in embracing this new culture of building an experience-centered organization, both human as well as employees as well as customers, is the ability to build a different kind of an organization where people are collaborating a lot more effectively between teams. And we have built our organizations historically around these functional areas. What the new generation of companies have showed us, or why these startups are doing extremely well, is because they are so purpose-driven. They are breaking the silos and they're being able to collaborate across these various teams to help drive these out. So what is the advice to governments, to large companies who are all going through these changes? How do you bring alignment between various teams? How do you make them work together? How do you execute on this? It seems to be a challenge that is synonymous with almost 90% of companies who are trying to make that shift in building a business relevant for this new era.
If I may start first, I would say one of the ingredients here is effective communications. It may sound cliche, it may sound something that we've heard so many times, but part of that effective communication is to communicate with an outward mindset, with the intent very clear in how we communicate out. And often the workforce sees how you walk the talk and how you walk the value that you stand for, so that they can read between the lines that the organization and the management means what they say, and the intent can be felt. And to me, it does not matter if the organization has a member of 5 staff or 25,000 staff. If the organization is able to receive communication effectively, and when I mean by effectively, it's not just one way where you just send emails out and people just read them, but also communication is about two-way as well, where there's a lot of co-mingling on various different levels, and leaders or perhaps future champions what the values that are being spoken about. Values these days such as agility, empathy, some of the main things that needs to be very clear in all those communications.
Tim, Sudhir, would you like to comment on this?
I guess the point I would make is it feels to me like we're operating in an outdated operating system. That what we have today is fragmented, it's linear, it's task oriented. That feels to me like an old way of operating, and it feels very much like industrial era kind of organization. But I think today we have an operating system that can manage different and multiple forms of inputs, multiple forms of expressions, connected in different ways as we are today, and disparate kinds of applications that need to be run simultaneously. These are all, in a way, a next generation operating system in terms of how we need to think about organizing our workplace, organizing our careers. And I think once we make that mindset, if we can put some parameters around what would a new operating system be, then I think we actually have a chance to be very successful. Because I think a lot of companies, a lot of places are still stuck in the industrial era kind of model, and there's a chance here to create something new and something far more interesting.
So, fabulous point, Tim, about the new operating system. So, as we look for ideas, as you look for ideas, and many times the ideas come from other industries. So, where should companies look for the ideas? Because if they restrict their ideas to their industries, then you don't see that. So, the Apple Store borrowed ideas from the luxury. So, where should we be looking for? What is your advice to individuals who are looking at the next set of places to learn from and build these new operating models, other than coming?
You've answered your question. They should look outside their industry. That's the first thing, is that to recognize we're in a very strong ecosystem type of structure right now, and that there are many different ways that we can connect. When you start to imagine a different type of ecosystem, I think that's where you're going to find potential solutions for your individual area. And I would encourage everything from biomimicry to other businesses that are far away from your particular sector. But it's important to keep an open mind that we're in a really transformative time, and if you look at the way species have survived over time, it's being able to adapt. And I think those who are going to be able to adapt well here need to look for models, need to look for solutions outside of their initial niche, or they're going to be in trouble.
So in ASEAN, which industry should we look up to as we want to learn and adopt those best practices?
Yeah, Manoj, you started this panel with a quote from Einstein, and it was also Einstein who was attributed a quote around being unable to solve a problem within the same paradigm it was built in. And that's, I think, to the point around looking outside and looking at other industries. I think the inspiration could be drawn from any industry, really. And we have seen organizations now, for example, when you talk about UX, if you trace it back, I think you will see many articles around the first UX designer being Walt Disney, for example, and how they started to create with their theme parks, which impacts into the emotions of the individual who's visiting it. So they played very well into that. They were very empathetic towards the visitors. So if we can draw on those experiences, and you look at how Pixar and everyone else is now hiring different fields of individuals and professions to be part of their movie making. They are also drawing inspiration from the outside. I think a psychologist was hired for one of the Pixar movies. I forget which one now, but I remember reading about that. So very similarly, when how many times have we been in a boardroom, and I'm not hitting out on any vertical, of course, but you have an individual who's 20 years in that industry going, we've tried that, it's never going to work. No, that doesn't work for our industry. We need to break out of that and going to the point around being open-minded and trying different things and drawing inspiration from the outside. That's really the best way to go. We see organizations moving towards a matrix structure now. They're trying to break the silos. They're trying to encourage more collaboration. But one point I'll just make is that job descriptions have to change. And going to the point Tim made around an OS, is no longer sequential programming, right? It is something that is going to be a little bit different. It's a little bit more immersive. And a single JD that's going to say, you work in this, and that's all you cover, that does not help collaboration at all within organizations. So that, as a fundamental, needs to change.
So maybe a pointed question to you, Tim, and maybe we can learn from you, simply because you run a firm which is developing and building human-centered experience for others. So how do you go about picking your talent? Do you pick them from an industry? Do they have to come from design? Can they come from engineering? Can they come from medicine? How do you build that team today, and how do you see that changing as you continue to build the organization moving forward? And what does it mean for all of us who are running, our own small or big businesses?
Yeah, I mean, our approach, I suppose, is to be somewhat, maybe, I don't know if this is the right word, but anti-disciplinary. A lot of companies are multidisciplinary or a particular skill set. We have people who have very good deep skills, and they can be from different sectors, whether that's from design or anthropology or engineering, whatever it may be. But they're typically what we look for are T-shaped learners. So people who have that core, but they're going to be broader at the top as they get older and as they get more experience. And the other thing we do is we do a rating system to understand their strengths and try to find places within the organization for those strengths to be maximized. And that allows us to be the most effective in terms of getting strong people working together. But out of those strengths, we also are able to understand a certain level of emotional intelligence. And for our business in particular, we have to have a high level of emotional intelligence if we're going to approach some of these problems, because it's getting more and more complex, and it's getting harder and harder to solve these problems. So that's a short version on that.
Excellent. The final question is more relating to governments. We touched upon it briefly, but maybe Shamshul or Sudev have comments on this as well, which is when we see governments around the world who are all innovating citizen services, where do we see those benchmarks? Where can we learn from? Is it from other governments? Is it from other private sector companies? And Shamshul, maybe you can comment briefly on whether, how do you bring in this new kind of talent to the government services so that you can innovate at the pace at which the consumer expectations are growing?
Yeah, I like to echo back what Tim mentioned about competitiveness. I would say that's the ingredient to make most of the governments to actually move forward and create the bleeding edge services for their citizens. At least personally, I see there are a few governments out there that's doing it right in terms of citizen experiences. We can see from decades ago, Estonia is one of them who has been innovating on the government space, creating lots of time-saving services for their citizens. Lately, due to COVID, we have seen how South Korea has innovated in terms of how they deal with COVID and how they use government services and all the contact points and all the policy and framework to make their population move forward despite COVID being, front and center around them. And we've seen Singapore as well emphasizing on the digital ID and the use of a single app that basically focuses people's attention onto a single channel of communication. As more functions within a government sees that they have to embrace citizens or customer journey, emphasis on empathy and understanding, what is the society looking for, whether it's on a state or federal level, where more services are needed to perhaps bring the next level of living condition and citizen satisfaction with the government and also with the society around them.
Thank you. Any quick comments, last comments, Tim and Sudev, before I wrap up the session? Less than 30 seconds each, if you have any.
I think Sam said it perfectly around the government picture, but I think going back to the idea of human-centered design is, again, whatever initiative you're starting off on, just have that end in mind and what goal you want to achieve. I think that's really important. Don't jump into procurements and purchasing and trying to get all the tech involved just yet, but just really have that strategy and then pinpoint the horizon so that you know where you want to be in 12 months, where you're going to be in 60, and then where you're going to be in the next 10 years. I think that's going to be a really critical part for many organizations.
Excellent. Tim, a final word from you?
I would just say that we're at a time where everything is changing so rapidly that to rely on the analytical answer might be the riskiest one, and that probably the most important one is to use our intuition a bit more, use the part that makes us human. You started with humanity here in the conversation, but I would say let's trust what we feel is right. And go from there, because it's going to be a difficult time to manage if we try to look at the past to solve the future.
Thank you very much, Tim. I jotted down 4 key big takeaways from today's conversation, and not one was about technology. The first one was about values, right? And you talked about how the values have transcended and still made Apple such an incredibly successful company, lasting decades. So I think the foundational pillar is the values and the second one was about trust. How do we forge the trust between the teams, between the trust with the customers, trust with the product, trust with the ability to deliver what we commit. Right? The third one I thought is very important for organizations as we move forward is the next generation operating system. Maybe the old style of building the functional team areas is become irrelevant. So we need to start designing a new kind of an operating system, and that will give us possibly a competitive advantage. And finally, the fourth one is, as we build these next generation operating system, we need to fuel that with anti-disciplinary teams, as you said. And I think that's a great input to help us build the organizations of the future and human-centered experience. So thank you very much for that participation. I appreciate the learning. I hope there was a learning for everybody. I would like to pass it back to Adrian. Thank you.
And once again, TM1 expresses our appreciation to Tim Kobe, Shamsul Ishan, and Sudev Banga for that amazing discussion. We've just heard their unique perspectives on human-centered experiences and the various approaches available to provide customers with the unique user experience. And moderating the session, Manish Menon, we say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, demystifying emerging digital services is the topic for our closing remarks. Presenting it, please join me and welcome the Executive Vice President of TM1, Shazurawati Abdul Karim.
Good afternoon. Today, we have heard about the power of knowing, a human-centered approach to transformation, and powerful design thinking. To be ahead of the game, we have to continue to transform and embrace new frontiers. Now, let's look at our top 5 picks to bring about the quantum leap for our digital services. Our first pick, AI is definitely our BFF. Why? Because AI is a competitive necessity for all businesses. AI is driving new levels of efficiency and performance for businesses of all sizes. According to IDC, 14% of Southeast Asian firms have adopted AI to some extent, with another 37% planning to in the next 5 years. According to EDBI and Kearney assessment of ASEAN nations, AI may add $1 trillion to the region's GDP by 2030 if properly implemented. Already, AI is part and parcel of our daily life we can't live without. The navigation apps that we use, Waze, Google Map, the ride-sharing apps that we rely on, Grab, Foodpanda. We turn to AI to help us in treating coronavirus and in technology tools to track and fight the pandemic. We use AI in our chatbots for better customer service, and we use AI in our digital marketing to improve sales. AI for cybersecurity applications is absolutely key. The ASEAN Post suggests that Southeast Asian companies may suffer a loss of $180 to $365 billion in the next years due to massive data breaches. AI-powered cybersecurity technologies can collect data from various sources and digital networks. They use algorithms to spot trends to flag out potentially malicious threats. We also expect 5G will accelerate the use cases for AI across all industries. Machine learning and AI capabilities from millions data sources allow for faster predictive analysis and decision-making. IDC research shows that with investments in IoT, enterprises can yield improvement in business operations by at least 30%, from improved productivity, reduced worker injury incidents, improved production flexibility, and improved quality and repeatability. Even with smart agriculture, where sensors are installed in farms to measure the yield, the level of moisture, minerals, and growth levels, quality improvements for the crops could improve significantly. Now, our second pick of the day is that mobile app is enterprise best fashion accessory. Why? Mobile applications now cover every aspect of modern life: banking, shopping, booking, service needs, learning, food, including wellness. According to Statista, worldwide mobile app downloads will hit 139 billion in 2021, increasing to 161 billion by 2023. In reality, mobile phones currently account for 70% of all user traffic. The figures speak for themselves, everybody. Mobile app success, they've made their way to every sector and every business. We need a mobile app to succeed in the present era. To date, 42% of adult population have used at least one on-demand service. If we now use on-demand food, grocery, parcel delivery, the trends in 2022 is on-demand fuel delivery, on-demand medicine delivery, and on-demand B2B delivery. All I can say is that the on-demand app development trend is here to stay, and the businesses that will not adapt are definitely going to get crushed by the competition. Surprise, but no surprise. The digital gap will always be there. The fast pace of the digital trends and transformation pace, it's very hard to keep for any enterprises. Two key approaches in managing the constant changes required in digital services are: 1, adopt agile practice at scale, and 2, embrace digital coalition and co-creation. Charles Darwin in 1809 famously said that it is not the strongest that survives, not the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. Adopting agile practice at scale is fundamental for enterprise digital transformation and digital service development. We don't only organize for agility. We must adopt agile practice. We must adopt agile process and mindset, and we digitize for agility. With agile practice, we are more nimble, with speed of action, and rapid thinking to mitigate constant changes required in digital services. Now, digital coalition between enterprises and digital service provider is a powerful way to co-create fit-for-purpose, people-centered transformation that's aligned to your strategic objectives. Digital coalition really puts the focus on digital service usability benefits and not be distracted by the technology itself. And digital coalition creates sustainable, impactful innovation by leveraging on the strength of digital talents of all parties. Our fourth choice, it is indeed a cloud-powered future that we are looking at. Nearly all companies will have a cloud-first principle by 2025, and cloud spend will surpass non-cloud spend. Cloud makes the success of leading digital pioneers. They leverage on cloud services and principles to optimize customer experience, create and monetize new services. The increasingly digital enterprise means that cloud will not only be a technological approach for delivering applications, but will also serve as a key driver to business innovation. Cloud is already creating new business models and revenue streams, and it is a true enabler of digital business. For all enterprises to compete with the digital giants, we must become platform businesses. Cloud allows us to change our digital business strategy from defense to offense. Computer World UK projects that 80% of organizations will migrate toward the cloud, hosting, and co-location services by 2025. Even Gartner anticipates cloud enabling business innovation in 3 core ways. That cloud will be the platform of choice for most IT services. That cloud will enable organizations to connect to a vast ecosystem of partners and suppliers that offer an expansive array of services, and that organizations will increasingly use cloud services to create agile, innovative business designs that enhance their core competencies. Lastly, everybody, please do up your IT budget. Regardless of which industry you operate in, market competition today in today's digital battleground means that technology investment cannot be taken lightly. Technology spending might well reach 20% of total operating costs by 2023, and technology spends as a portion of revenue could grow from 6.2% to 8%. We know, by and large, CIOs report less than 15% of their technology budget for fostering innovation. We recommend successful companies to set aside at least 20 to 25% of IT spend to reimagine value creation and discover new ways to disrupt the status quo. Regardless of the size of your organization, technology dependence changes dramatically over time. Costly to build technological capabilities can sometimes separate winners from losers in today's digital war zone. Now, taking a hybrid approach of outsourcing some of the digital services could perhaps be the best solution to sustain digital transformation efforts without dissipating technology budgets. At TM1, we take your human-centered transformation forward by harnessing the power of IR 4.0, AI, big data and IoT through our robust building blocks of cloud, cybersecurity, smart services, connectivity solutions, data center, and professional services, along with our many leading global partners. I certainly hope you've enjoyed today's session and look hard into our top 5 insights to drive your people-centered digital services development. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us today in our annual LEAP Summit.
Thank you, Shazurawati, for your thoughts on how to achieve a smooth digitalization journey. Perfectly said, as we are just about to draw our day to a close. But just before we let you go, we have one very exciting segment left in our agenda, and that is the Lucky Draw. For the Lucky Draw, TM1 has prepared 20 awesome prizes for you. Let me tell you what you can look forward to. MagSafe chargers, handphone holders and laptop coolers, Seagate expansion 2 terabyte hard disks. In total, we've got 15 of those to give away. And our 5 grand prizes are the Xiaomi Mi Watch Lite, Monster Clarity 101 earbuds, Huawei MatePad 11, iPhone 13, Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3. Let's begin.
Hello again, folks. I hope everyone's enjoying themselves.
Oh, hi, Tommy. It's great to see you again. We have randomly generated 15 lucky winners for the first set of our lucky draws. Tommy?
Let's take a look at the screen.
Congratulations to all the winners! We will be in contact with you after the event for you to redeem your lucky draw prizes.
Congrats!
So, 15 prizes already drawn. We still have 5 grand prizes to go. Whenever you're ready, Tommy, let's do the draw for the Xiaomi Mi Watch Lite.
Sure, Adrian. Unleashing the randomizer.
And the winner is Michael Lim. Xiaomi Mi Watch Lite. You are the winner. Congratulations. Tommy, next, let's now do the draw for the Monster Clarity 101 earbuds. Tommy, you ready?
Ready. Unleashing the randomizer. And go.
And the winner is Ozil Sibin. Congratulations, Ozil. You have won the Monster Clarity 101 earbuds. Tommy, let's draw our next winner for the Huawei MatePad 11. I think I'm ready.
Are you all ready? Unleashing the randomizer. And go.
And the winner is Hishamuddin Yusuf. Hishamuddin Yusuf. Congratulations. Tommy, let's now draw our next winner, who is going to receive an iPhone 13. Tommy, apa kata kita teruskan?
Keep them coming, Tarima Cass A.
And the winner is Yusri. Congratulations, you have won the iPhone 13. iPhone 13. Tommy, this is our final draw. It is our grand prize, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3. Let's do the final draw, Tommy.
Sure, Adrian. Unleashing the randomizer.
Congratulations, and the grand prize winner is Nur Razima Muhammad Jamil. Congratulations to you and all our winners. And thank you, Tommy, for unleashing the randomizer and for joining us today. Bye, Tommy.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you again, Tommy. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of TM1, we would like to thank our esteemed speakers, remarkable panelists, and of course, all of you for joining us today. We would like to hear from you, so please scan the QR code to access the feedback form. Contact us should you have any inquiries or comments. Now, for those of you who have typed in your questions earlier, we will respond to you individually. That said, we are thrilled at the success of today's event, and we sincerely hope that TM1 Leap Summit 2021 has proved insightful in improving your business through the conversations and discussions on utilizing human-centered technology as we take a leap into the future. Until we meet again, enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe, Malaysia.
We are ready to serve the nation and all Malaysians with better services, high-speed connectivity, and a secure digital ecosystem for a truly digital Malaysia. As our world transforms rapidly and is ready to embrace the digital future, where our achievements today will be greatly surpassed tomorrow, where businesses move, work and trade at speeds like never before. As we securely connect citizens, businesses and government with each other and to the world. As the cloud and cybersecurity services provider for the Government of Malaysia, complete with our comprehensive suite of connectivity, digital infrastructure, and solutions, we are ever ready to deliver and serve, secure and protect, together with the vision of our government to take transformation forward for a better Malaysia.